In today's video, we will continue with the cycle of illness series, the immune system, but today we're going to be talking specifically about the microbiome and salicylates and oxalates. In the mast cell community, there's actually a lot of talk going on about oxalates and salicylates, and many folks focus upon removing them from the diet because it causes them harm. But like other types of foods like histamine, etc., it didn't cause the illness. Histamine, salicylates, oxalate intolerances are not the root cause to your illness. What they truly are giant red flags telling you where your cycles are impaired. Alright, oxalates. Oxalates are naturally occurring compounds that are thought to be plant defense chemicals that are found in a lot of health foods, like spinach, beets, nuts, and seeds, as well as many others. And some of us are more sensitive to oxalates and can benefit from reducing them in our diet. High amounts of oxalates can trigger or contribute to reduced mineral absorption, chronic inflammation, bacterial damage, oxidative stress and mitochondrial dysfunction, nutrient deficiencies, vulvar and urinary tract pain, joint pain and inflammation, autoimmunity, and chronic kidney stones. Alright, so how do they get into the body? How do they affect the body? There is actually a gut, immune system, and complement entry point. So salicylates and oxalates are normal plant compounds, and healthy bodies can clear them without issue. But when you start to have gut permeability issues, aka a leaky gut, you wind up having dysbiosis such as like candida, SIBO, etc., low bile flow, so you're already struggling with your gallbladder, low DAO, and remember DAO helps clear histamine, and sluggish phase 2 detox. Many people with methylation issues have a sluggish detox cycle somewhere in the system. So when you have gut permeability issues, dysbiosis, low bile flow, low DAO, and a sluggish phase 2 detox, they can cross your oxalates and salicylates, they can cross the gut barrier too easily, especially if you have a leaky gut. And this is going to trigger immune surveillance, major histocompatibility signaling, and low-grade immune activation. And this feeds directly into the complement system. Alright, we are talking about the gut, the immune system, and the complement system interacting. And we have talked a lot about the complement system earlier in the Cycle of Illness, the Immune System series. If you need to learn more about this, please go back and check out the complement system, and I have a full set of slides and video to go with it. But the point I am trying to make here is if you have leaky gut, alright, and as you can see on the right side of the chart, we have gut health and your microbiome. And this has direct impact on your immune system and how it works. So if you are having cytokines, your cytokines are traveling through your gut, and if you have a leaky gut, you're triggering your immune system, which is releasing cytokines and inflammatory signals within cells, which triggers the major histocompatibility or the complement system. And the MHC class 3 is activated by those cytokines and inflammatory signals, and it's upregulated during infection, foreign invader, which could be your oxalates and salicylates, and cell damage, and those can cause that, and it will trigger your complement system. When it triggers your complement system, that's your C3 and your C5, it is going to trigger your mast cells and impair your cell lysis. And once you have mast cell activation, if cell lysing is not working properly in the complement system, then you have uncontrolled mast cell degranulation. And this is part of the reason why I tell people to fast, because we're trying to shut down this whole snowball effect. And with chronic mast cell activation, it is severely going to wind up hampering your methylation. This has somewhat of a direct link in your gut health via the liver, your gallbladder, and your pancreas. So poor detox of the intestinal tract and your gallbladder affects your microbiome. So if you already have known methylation impairments, you're already going to have detox pathway issues, you're already going to have a slower liver and a slower gallbladder. All of this is already being impacted along with your pancreas. And all of this has a huge impact on your gut health, your microbiome, your immune system, and then genning up your major histocompatibility complex and your complement system, which keeps your inflammation and your immune system running on chronic fumes. So for those of you that have mast cell problems, methylation issues, leaky gut, etc., when you get stuck and everything you're doing to try to heal is not working, this is what is happening. You are stuck inside of this snowball effect. And that is why you want to fast, because we have to break this cycle. Okay, so as we're saying, when it comes to oxalates and salicylates, once the major histocompatibility is engaged, the complement system is going to trigger the C3 and the C5. Then the mast cells are going to wind up being triggered, and cell lysis and cleanup becomes inefficient. Now, salicylates and oxalates aren't just compounds anymore. Now they're perceived as threats because the system cannot clear them properly. And this is where folks are saying, I react to everything now, and it can also help keep you stuck there. Now, this is where mast cell histamine also overlaps. Salicylates and oxalates provoke mast cell mediator release, they worsen histamine intolerance, and they increase cytokines and increase prostaglandins and leukotrienes. And as you can see by the chart here, this is why, because this is a feedback loop that keeps your immune system stuck. It is constantly reactivating the complement system, which worsens your mast cell instability and keeps your immune system running. And like I keep saying, this is where you can get really stuck. Now, your methylation, oxalate and salicylates also affect methylation. And the reason it does that is because there's a bottleneck taking place here. Both compounds rely on sulfation, glucuronidation, methylation support, and adequate bile and mineral availability. So basically, if you have sluggish methylation and it's not able to keep up with what you're eating, if you're eating oxalates and salicylates on top of it, your salicylates and oxalates are going to accumulate. Even if you're not initially sensitive to them, they will start accumulating in your body and starting to cause damage and inflammation. Then your immune system is going to start signaling more and more and more, and it's going to keep escalating until you cut them out. And then what happens is your symptoms worsen, and then this snowball effect just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. We are talking about oxalates and salicylates and how methylation impairments affect the way your body breaks them down. And in order to break them down, your body depends on these parts of methylation to be working. As we've discussed before, these are the methylation cycles. Your detox pathways have several avenues within methylation. There's the transsulfuration process, where the body makes glutathione, the body's master detoxifier. This pathway also has a lot to do with your sulfur levels as well. Those with the SUOX may have difficulty with sulfur, most likely a sulfur intolerance as well. Sulfur is needed to help the body to detox, but more importantly, it can affect your ability to tolerate sulfur foods and many medications or supplements, as sulfur helps deliver medications into the body, and sulfur is actually needed for so many processes in the body, including detoxification. If you have the CBS gene, it's actually going to make it more difficult for you to make glutathione. And with the CBS gene, this is also your mast cell disorder gene. If you combine the CBS gene and the SUOX gene, and even if you add in the ACE gene as well, you're going to wind up having issues with blood pressure, you're going to wind up having issues with detoxification, food intolerances, mast cell issues, and a lot of food intolerances. So this part of the cycle here is paramount in helping improve our health. And if we are already compromised in this section, believe it or not, it's going to make salicylate and oxalate issues worse for us. So we're going to wind up being a little bit more sensitive to them. Then you have mitochondria involvement. Mitochondrial damage or impairments with the Krebs cycle or the electron transport chain feed directly into the urea cycle, which is also, again, part of the methylation cycle. And the urea cycle is responsible for a great amount of detoxification in the body through urine. So all of these sections are going to affect your health and your ability to tolerate oxalates and salicylates. But that's just the cycles working themselves. Now we have to look at the bionutrients. Now, I made cheat sheets for each and every single cycle within methylation. But in order to access these, you need to go to the full methylation master slides, and you need to check out the methylation video, because I go through this in great detail, including the vitamins, minerals, nutrients you need to keep these cycles working. So, if you are having oxalates and salicylate sensitivity, part of your methionine cycle isn't working, which encompasses a big part of your detox pathway, you definitely have mitochondrial damage, and you have gut damage, and most definitely a poor microbiome. An unhealthy microbiome cannot tolerate oxalates or salicylates, and some of you are also finding out it cannot tolerate a whole lot more than just oxalates and salicylates. Now keep in mind, not all of your issues are histamine food related, oxalate related, salicylate related, etc. because there is far more going on behind the scenes. And a big picture behind all of this is your microbiome and how it fits into the rest of the cycle of illness. So this methylation detoxification bottleneck actually prevents us from removing oxalates and salicylates from our body, and because of that fact it winds up building up in our system. That's why a lot of you may notice initially you can have sodas, etc., but as time goes on your health gets worse and worse and worse, and what is happening is the oxalates are building up in your system and you're taking them in faster than your body can clear them out. And if that's the case, this is your body trying to tell you and let you know, like, hey, my methylation's too slow. Hey, I don't have enough of the micronutrients needed to keep this part of methylation running. And most importantly, 3, it is because your microbiome is really messed up at the time. Now, for some of you, you've already lived this, because when our microbiome is really messed up, we already have a great deal of symptoms. And then if you add in that you're adding oxalates, let's say we're drinking soda. Soda is a very strong oxalate. It is also the most common and most popular drink that people reach for when they're tired. Now, when you drink soda, 9 times out of 10, we're making sure we're getting enough caffeine, because with chronic illness, we are so tired, always tired. We all know that chronic illness is notorious for causing fatigue. But when we get fatigued, we wind up having cravings for caffeine, for sugar, anything to help us get going again. And sometimes we're eating and sometimes we're drinking it. But when we have the more sugar, the more caffeine, all of this stuff is pro-inflammatory, which means we're aggravating our immune system. But when you eat the extra food, the sugar, the caffeine, you're going to wind up chewing through all of your available nutrients. And those available nutrients are needed to keep your methylation running, which then in turn causes more hunger. And then this creates more need for more nutrients. So we eat, we have more caffeine, we have more sugar, we have more food. Now here's the thing. We are actually making this cycle worse by continuing to eat when we're already struggling with fatigue and chronic immune activation. So eating more food isn't necessarily better, because remember, we still have that bottleneck in methylation that we have to get past. So if you're drinking caffeine, sugar, and everything else, you're making that bottleneck worse. And if you're smoking or drinking, forget it. You are shooting yourself in the foot right from the get-go. You are basically jamming on the brakes to all of this. And then you are making your immune system, your major histocompatibility complex, your complement system, your mast cell activation go through the roof, which then in turn drops your methylation, drops your gut health and your microbiome, and sends your immune system through the roof. This also puts your mitochondria in a precarious position, because what you're going to wind up doing is putting your cells in the cell danger zone. And if your mitochondria are in the cell danger zone, this cycle is going to keep on running amok, and your health is going to deteriorate significantly. So here's the other thing with this. When we have this cycle being a negative feedback loop, if you're eating salicylates and oxalates and other foods, drinks, toxin exposure, allergens, etc., there's another side to this. You can wind up kicking off the HPA axis. This is your stress response system. Now, I need you to understand, when this cycle is going and running amok, this is a huge stress on your body, just like it is causing stress to your mitochondria and every other system and organ in your body. So when your HPA axis is activated, it doesn't only have an effect on the cycle of illness, but everything in it. And seeing that all systems, all organs are encompassed inside of the cycle of illness, and the cycle of illness drives everything in your body, you're going to understand why this is so important. The HPA axis is considered the stress response command center. It is part of your nervous system, immune system, and your endocrine system. That means you're going to have issues with mood, adrenals, stress responses. It's going to have effect on your hormones, your metabolism, which is a major portion of your methylation, digestion, because stress shuts down your gut, your immune responses, because the MHC and complement system and your mast cells are firing non-stop, and this is why trauma causes us to have so many more symptoms, because trauma is keeping the HPA axis running amok. It's keeping it in the on position at super speeds. And because of this, this is where some of you are going to wind up having adrenal fatigue or too much adrenaline in your body. And it's a terrible place to be. And if you've been there, my heart goes out to you because I know how rough this can get. This also affects the cardiovascular system because it puts strain and inflammation on your heart, your veins, your arteries, your blood pressure issues, dizziness, mood, and yes, this also affects your energy storage. So with your HPA axis constantly activating or being stuck on, you're always going to be beyond exhausted, but thanks to the adrenals, never sit still. This is where you get the I'm too tired to function but too wide awake to rest, as well as I can't keep my eyes open all day long, but when it's finally time to go to bed, boing, wide awake. It drives me nuts when this happens. But this system and these cycles are what's taking place. So this whole snowball effect, in combination with the activation of your HPA axis, which controls your hormones, which controls your adrenal glands, which means your adrenal glands are surging, this is where you get stuck with all these problems. So let's take a little bit of a look here. When it comes to stress, you can't sleep because of stress. And why? Because it crashes your methylation, it shuts down the gut and activates the HPA axis. And this is all going to affect serotonin and melatonin production, which is part of methylation and your gut microbiome. And your detox pathways are also extremely sluggish, which means that these toxins, because they can't be detoxed properly, are building up in your system. And if you're not moving enough, exercising enough, or drinking enough water, guess what? You're going to continue to run your system through the roof. Anxiety. Believe it or not, your microbiome and your methylation play a massive part behind anxiety, as well as caffeine. When it comes to the microbiome, if you are missing a certain strain, or if you have too much of a certain strain or bad strains, then this is also going to up your anxiety levels. Disrupted sleep-wake cycle. Well, this is methylation, your circadian rhythm, and that's your inner body clock, which methylation actually follows. And impairments in methylation, or if you're doing shift work, you have a poor diet, toxin overload, hormone dysregulation, and if you just sit too much and don't have enough exercise, this is going to kick off this problem. And for all of these so far, don't forget the impacts of caffeine causing this. Because believe it or not, caffeine actually affects these systems. We just learned it on how it keeps the immune system running high via running through your nutrients too fast, as well as keeping the HPA axis going, your adrenals going, and don't forget, caffeine raises estrogen up to 80%. With the Calm Tea, it raises your breast cancer risk as much as 700%. So hormone fluctuations, you guessed it, caused by your foods, your methylation cycles, and your microbiome, but in particular your estroblome within your microbiome. The estroblome helps with estrogen, which sadly changes when you go through menopause. So those of you who are going through significant hormonal fluctuations, this is going to affect your sleep. And for my ladies out there who are going through menopause, I feel ya. Believe me, I feel ya. But we can drastically reduce these symptoms by taking care of our methylation, by taking care of our microbiome, making sure we're getting enough exercise and eating healthy foods and drinking enough water. Because remember, the whole point of this is to shut down that HPA axis, get our methylation, mitochondria, and everything else working like it's supposed to. Once you do that, these symptoms will drastically cut. Caffeine consumption also is a huge player in preventing you from sleeping. And like I said, caffeine plays a role in many different things. Poor sleep hygiene. That is a dark room, quiet, no devices, in bed and up at the same time every day. And this helps fix the circadian rhythm, which helps your methylation significantly. Electronic devices. Electronic devices have blue light. It actually crashes your methylation. So blue light can actually damage and crash your methylation and affect your health and your eyesight. And believe it or not, it actually affects mental health. It drives me nuts because we are surrounded by blue light. We have it in with all the lights, the LED lights, your computer screens, iPads, phones, everything of that nature. Street lights, car headlights, everything is blue light nowadays. And it does a lot of damage to our vision as well. It changes the nearsighted, farsighted. It changes the optical length and how you see things. And light is extremely important for your health. We just don't want too much blue light, and unfortunately, we are inundated with nothing but blue light around us all the time. And all of this leads to insomnia. Now, please understand that I am trying to illustrate how all of these different systems are connected together. And this is really difficult to do when everything ties to everything. So I'm trying to highlight the intricate relationships between all of these systems so that you can heal. So if you're watching my video series and you see that I get repetitive, this is why. I am desperately trying to show you how everything is so tightly interconnected together. Now, when it comes to this cycle, when it comes to stress and trauma, it plays a huge, huge, huge impact on your immune system and this particular cycle. But more importantly, this particular cycle leaves you more susceptible to things like stress, PTSD, and trauma. And this is why trauma affects us so dang much. Because when the HPA axis is on, we are more susceptible to PTSD, more susceptible to stress, more susceptible to gaining traumas, etc. Because everything affects us so much worse. Because in our minds, we are stuck in a hypervigilance state. So this is more than just fasting. This is more than just your diet. This is more than just healing your methylation, mitochondria, and your gut microbiome. You also have to address the things that are causing you so much stress, and you also have to address your traumas. Because if you don't, it keeps this cycle running like a freaking freight train. We are going to talk about the HPA axis in another video or two, but the slides are done and they are already posted, but the video is still coming. So if you want to look at the HPA axis and slides, you're going to go to part 3 of the cycle of illness immune slides and scroll down to the HPA axis. It is about the slide number 300 or so in the cycle of illness immune system slides. So it's quite a ways down there. You gotta get to about slide 300 to review the HPA axis if you want to jump ahead. So if we have activation of the HPA axis, this is going to cause significant stress to your body because your body is in a hypervigilant state. And guess what? All of this is going to affect the cycle of illness, including your mitochondria. It is going to destabilize your health and mental well-being. And this will heighten stress responses and mental illness. We already know that sensitivity is due to methylation, blocked detox, mitochondrial damage, and microbiome issues. When the stress response system kicks in, it's like pouring gasoline on the fire. This is going to tell your body to ramp up. This means more sensitivities, more reactions, heightened stress responses, more mood issues, mental instability, more symptoms overall. And with this comes significant degradation to the cycles and worsening immune system reactions, which in turn continues to damage the cycle. It's like a runaway freight train barreling at full speed down the tracks. Destination, chronic illness, autoimmunity, and serious diseases and cancer. So it's extremely important that we shut all of this off. And this is why I tell the people that I help, fast, fast, fast. Because this is going to turn it off. If you are still eating and drinking, etc., and the compounds in the food are still triggering you, this is the only way to shut it down. Yes, you could take the pharmaceutical route. Absolutely. But remember, pharmaceuticals, they either hijack, stimulate, or completely suppress a pathway in the body. We do not want to do that. It is a band-aid fix, because if we're just putting patches on all over our body, what winds up happening? Other parts start breaking, and then we need more meds. In order to truly heal, we have to address this at the root cause. And the root causes are shutting down these systems, not with pharmaceuticals, but with healthy diet, healthy nutrients, vitamins, and minerals that are unique to you that you need to help support your unique cycles, as well as water, exercise, etc. So let's look at this, at how this works inside of the cycle of illness. Now, when you have an oxalate issue, there is gut microbiome degradation. Normally, bacteria like Oxalobacter formigenis help break down oxalates. Now, normally when you have dysbiosis, these bacteria actually are lost. And because these bacteria are lost, oxalates are going to accumulate in the gut, and it's going to accumulate in your system. And this is the trigger point. When you have a weakened microbiome, your body cannot process, more specifically, your microbiome cannot break down oxalates. Your body loses its buffering capability between your gut and your body. And then what winds up happening is these oxalates damage the gut. They make their way out of the gut through processes like leaky gut, and then they damage organs and systems in the body. And this slot right here fits directly into the gut dysbiosis step in the center of your cycle of illness. Because remember, your immune system, your gut microbiome is the central hub of everything that's taking place. Okay, let's take a look at how oxalates and mast cells and histamine activation work together. So oxalates are like sharp crystals. They damage epithelial lining, which is in your gut, and skin, cells, etc. And they also damage your mitochondria. That mechanical irritation of the crystals rubbing against this causes a mast cell degranulation and histamine release, because again, it's damaging the cells, and if the cells get too damaged, it also inhibits your body's ability to process the oxalates and further inhibits the entire cycle of illness. One way to tell this is if you're drinking soda and you notice in the morning you're feeling pretty decent, you might not have the best amount of energy, but your swelling is down. And as you drink soda throughout the day, as your swelling goes up, even if it's the only thing you're doing, that's oxalates building up in your system. Or let's say you eat an oxalate heavy meal, you may feel like you have a hangover the following day and be achy and sore and irritable. And remember, the oxalates are triggering mast cell degranulation and histamine release. So now, we know that with histamine comes cytokines when your mast cells degranulate, and this amplifies your inflammation. This will worsen your leaky gut and it's probably, chances are, you already have a leaky gut, so it'll make it worse and increase your pain and your neurological symptoms. Here, oxalates act like glass shards thrown into an already inflamed tissue, making mast cells dump even more inflammatory mediators. So it's important to understand that this can get you stuck in a negative feedback loop just by what you're eating, the histamine, the mast cells, and the oxalates. And again, remember, this all stems from your gut microbiome and not having the bacteria like Oxalobacter formigens. Okay, how oxalates fit in with inflammation and mitochondria. Oxalates generate ROS directly, and ROS is a reactive oxygen species. And what that specifically means is oxidative stress to your body. And if you remember from previous videos, oxidative stress is like a rusting effect inside of your body. This will damage organs, systems, and prematurely age you, as well as the fact that if you have too much oxidative stress to the body, if you have the MTHFR 1298 Charlie, this is actually going to make that far worse. It's also going to up your chances of neurological issues, as well as joint pain, organ pain, etc. So really here, oxalates, when it comes to mast cells and histamine activation, is going to act like glass shards thrown into an already inflamed tissue. And this goes for anyone who is having oxalate issues and inflammation problems and chronic health issues. And making mast cells dump even more inflammatory mediators. So this can kind of create a negative feedback loop. More oxalates, more mast cells, more inflammation, more methylation issues, more mitochondrial damage, more organ damage, more systems damage, and you continuously deteriorate your leaky gut, which just keeps the negative feedback loop going. All right, inflammation and mitochondria. Oxalates, as we've been talking about, generate oxidative stress, and they bind with calcium, magnesium, and iron, and this blocks mitochondrial enzymes and ATP production. And remember, ATP is the energy that your body creates, that you feel. It's also the fuel that helps your biochemical processes run. It's also extremely crucial for your methylation to run properly. And some of you may remember this conversation when we were in methylation. The result will affect your energy, and it will also create muscle fatigue and wasting. So if you've got too many oxalates and you've got inflammation and mitochondrial damage, eventually this energy deficit, and for those of you who are dependent upon caffeine to even function just a little bit, and believe me, I understand, I've been there, but at the same time, we are hurting ourselves by continuing to drink it because we're already at an energy deficit, and we're going to add caffeine, which tends to have oxalates in it. And what happens is it makes that energy deficit worse, and that's why we're guzzling it down left and right. And this will cause muscle fatigue, and this will cause muscle wasting as well eventually. This also accelerates the cachexia loop by pushing mitochondria further into collapse. And we'll be talking about that in this next little section. I actually have an entire section on cachexia in the immune system slides, part 3. It's actually the next section after this one. So that you can go ahead and look into it. But this is where you're chronically ill and you're just losing weight faster than you could possibly imagine, and you can't keep it on. And that's part of cachexia. So if you're in that category where you're struggling with your weight, please look into that. I will be posting those slides shortly, and I will be doing a video specifically on that next. Okay. So, oxalates. Oxalates also contribute to immune confusion and autoimmunity. Damaged tissues release danger signals. So, remember, when your cells are damaged, your mitochondria is damaged, remember, it also sends out that cell danger signal, and this is what we're talking about. Proteins exposed near oxalate deposits can look foreign. So, when your immune system responds, it is basically looking at the proteins in your body in order to determine what to attack and what is supposed to be part of your body. And because oxalates and proteins tend to group together, the immune system can't tell the difference. So it looks for it and it helps create this autoimmune confusion where the immune system can't tell the difference. And because there's all of this cross reactivity where everything is just fueling everything, oxalates are making this worse, and it just pours fuel to the fire for your autoimmune condition, mast cell condition, or your chronic illness condition. It's better if you just pull those oxalates out of your system as much as possible. And if that's not possible, then you have to heal your microbiome first and foremost, and really heal your methylation and really heal your mitochondria. So the main trigger to oxalate problems is in your microbiome. And then from there, oxalates pour into the system, directly irritating mast cells. They increase your histamine, they pierce through tissues, they worsen cytokine storms, and they accelerate both cachexia and autoimmune loops. And remember, there are specific sections in mitochondria and methylation that also contributes to your ability to be able to tolerate oxalates. But the buck stops at your microbiome. Alright, so oxalates are supposed to be cleared out of your system through your urine via your kidneys. But if they don't exit properly or there's too much of it, this can result in stones, calcification of your kidney, and kidney disease. Oxalates also steal your minerals and your nutrients. It causes systemic depletion in calcium, magnesium, and iron binding inside of your mitochondria. Because the oxalates are lowering your available calcium and magnesium, this actually results in worsening cramps, especially around the time of the month with women. Also, Charlie horses, etc., arrhythmia, and bone loss. So if you're already have the MTHFR 1298, you already have cramps, you're already menstruating, you're already struggling with Charlie horses through your muscles, etc. Oxalates and drinking oxalates and eating oxalates is going to make all of this a lot worse. This will also cause worsening bone, muscle, and neuro symptoms. And I cannot tell you how bad these symptoms can get. They can really throw your entire system through the roof. I am speaking from personal experience when I tell you that oxalates alone, let's just say you had an oxalate diet, and that's like the only thing you drink. Even if you're on a liquid diet and you just have food that's nothing but oxalates, the oxalate alone can take you down and create more symptoms than you could possibly imagine. And the same thing holds true to salicylates. The salicylates are not quite as severe as oxalates, but they still cause damage to the body and they still cause immune reactions. Oxalates also have a huge neurological tie-in. Oxalates are part of the gut-brain axis disruption. So the neurosymptoms are peripheral neuropathy, so that means there's oxalates in your nerves, and brain inflammation. Okay, if you've been watching my videos so far in the Cycle of Illness series, you know the blue ones are supplemental information. Information that helps support everything we have talked about so far. So, in your microbiome, you have microbiota that helps break down oxalates. That is Oxalobacter formigens, which we have already talked about, E. coli, Lactobacillus, and Bifidobacterium. And for those of you who are mast cell patients are very familiar with the lactobacillus and the bifidobacterium. Now the lactobacillus generally trip up our mast cells. So a lot of us take the bifidobacterium in the Seeking Health formula. So the bifidobacterium helps with our mast cells and with breaking down oxalates. And this is very important and we need to make sure we're taking our probiotics. So when we eat plants high in oxalates, the gut microbiome metabolizes some of the oxalates, and then our intestines absorb some of the oxalates we have eaten. And oxalates are absorbed as free oxalate. However, if calcium is available in the intestines, it easily binds to the oxalates and helps prevent absorption. And this is why it can chew through all of your calcium. You want the oxalate to bind to calcium, but if you don't have enough calcium, you're going to wind up shortchanging yourself with calcium, especially if you're eating way too many oxalates. Precursors of oxalates produced in the body include amino acids and carbohydrates. So the amino acids you're eating, which can also be a mast cell degranulator, and carbohydrates are actually tend to create more oxalates in your body. So for example, like potatoes, you can eat potatoes, but potatoes are an oxalate food, and therefore it produces more oxalate as it's being broken down. Hydroxyproline also creates oxalates from collagen breakdown. Glycine are amino acid sources, which if they get broken down can be broken down into oxalates. Glycolate, glyoxylate, and glycoxyl are derived from carbohydrates and can form oxalates in the body through their catabolic pathway. Now, I'm not going to get deep in depth with this because I am not an oxalate expert here, but the important thing to understand is that carbohydrates and foods rich in amino acids can be broken down and made into oxalates inside of your body. And we really need the Oxalobacter formigens, the E. coli, the lactobacillus, and the bifidobacterium part of our microbiome to help break it down. The biosynthesis of oxalates in the liver accounts to 50 to 80% of the body's oxalate pool. So you've got a lot of oxalates sitting in your liver, and dietary intake accounts for the remainder. Now, remember, weak methylation and methylation impairments will slow this down drastically. And remember, methylation takes place inside of your liver. So a damaged liver and methylation impairments are going to slow this down even further. And that includes people who have non-alcoholic fatty liver. That is a form of damage to your liver. Okay, in the bottom right-hand picture, you can see the different types of oxalate degrading bacterial community, and you can also see the oxalates leaving the intestinal tract into your blood vessels, and you can see there's like little shards inside with your blood, and this damages so much of your body, including your cardiovascular system. Okay, higher oxalate levels are associated with kidney stones, urinary nanocrystals, joint pain, skin issues, retinal changes, believe it or not, MRI contrast, specifically gadolinium, which I know is a hot topic in the news and amongst mast cell patients because of its chronic effects after receiving it. Believe it or not, this MRI contrast is like a super bomb to create oxalates within your system, and it overwhelms your system. It also causes mitochondrial dysfunction, endothelial, which is your vascular changes, and causes atherosclerosis. It also causes mast cell activation, inflammation, and macrophage activation. And remember, macrophages are part of your immune system cells. The NLRP3 inflammasome activation, and certain types of breast cancer. Now, the oxalates in your body come from two sources. They're coming from the food that you are eating, or it's naturally produced in the body during hydroxyproline and glycoxylate conversion. And that's just how your body is breaking down certain compounds, and when it does, it can make additional oxalates. Now remember, oxalates, when it comes to getting them out of your system, they bind with calcium and they're excreted through your intestines. Now remember, they're supposed to bind with calcium, but if you have too much oxalates and not enough calcium, you're going to shortchange yourself in calcium and get a calcium deficiency. That does not mean take more calcium. It means take out the oxalates. Do not take calcium unless you're actually calcium deficient. because that's going to open a whole different ball of wax of health problems for you. So if your calcium deficiency is because of oxalates, fix the oxalate problem and then get retested to check your calcium levels then. Okay, so it's going to get excreted through your intestines that way. Or it's going to get absorbed through your bloodstream and excreted through your kidneys. And this requires your mitochondria and your methylation, the urea cycle to be specific, to be working properly. There are also genetic factors, so gene mutations, that also influence your ability to metabolize oxalates. And you can see they are listed right here in this chart. I'm not going to go over all of them, but you can pause here and take a look at it. So, okay, we already know that oxalate buildup causes joint pain, eye issues, and skin deposits. They cause kidney stones. Oxalates can be deposited in the joints, the skin, the retina, the synovial fluid, which is around your joints. And guess what? If you're one of the poor patients who is constantly having their joints lock up, especially in their legs, but they don't have arthritis, guess what? Here's your sign. It can also be deposited in cartilage, tendons, bones, and cause bursitis and synovitis. It triggers inflammatory responses in the joint, and it kind of acts similar to gout. It does affect tissue remodeling. It is going to damage them, and it is going to affect how they heal and result in fibrosis. It's also going to cause skin issues like papules and nodules on your hands and face. You may have bluish hands or feet, and it can affect your eyes. It's called livedo reticularis. When it comes to mitochondrial dysfunction, we've already discussed this briefly. It's going to affect your ATP, that's your cellular energy, and that is going to drop, which is also going to seize up your methylation cycles, because without ATP, methylation cannot happen. It's also going to jump your oxidative stress, and oxalates can cause issues in immune cells. Those with high oxalate diets can have significant decrease in mitochondrial metabolic function. And with mast cell issues, if you have the CBS gene, this will be worse, and you will have a much bigger impact on your health, especially with glutathione deficiencies. All right, the MRI contrast, the gadolinium, and its long-term issues. A 2025 study showed that the presence of oxalic acid causes a decomposition reaction with gadolinium, specifically the omniscan and the deuterium. They can form gadolinium oxalate nanoparticles. This causes the NLRP3 inflammasome to activate. This all causes long-term effects with kidney damage, joint pain, skin problems, and significant brain fog. And the only way you're going to get out of this, if you end up having a huge reaction to gadolinium, is to support your mitochondria, your microbiome, and methylation to overcome it. Now, when it comes to this, you're probably going to want hydrogen water, because it helps with the oxidative stress and free radicals, because it's lending its electrons. So it'll help neutralize some of that problem. You're also going to want to make sure that you're taking your proper nutrients to help your methylation cycle go, and you're also wanting to make sure you're taking your precursors to making glutathione. And personally, I take Amy Meyer's acetylglutathione. Again, it's not sponsored. No one's sponsoring me. I don't get any discounts. That's just the one that I take that I find works the best. Of course, not drinking soda works better. Endothelial cell damage and atherosclerosis, we've already touched on this. Endothelial cells are the inner lining of blood and lymphatic vessels. So in endothelial cells, oxalate causes changes in calcium levels, because remember, it binds with them, which leads to endothelial cell injury because there's not enough and there's too much oxalate. It's directly linked to atherosclerosis, vascular dysfunction, and hypertension. And high oxalate with low calcium intake results in higher risk of hypertension and actually kidney disease as well. When it comes to the mast cells, we've already talked about this. It releases histamine, tryptase. Some of the mast cells release tryptase, not all of them, and inflammatory cytokines when stimulated by a pathogen, allergen, chemical, or other trigger. And this overlaps with oxalate issues. Your CBS gene, and remember, the CBS gene is your mast cell activation disorder gene and your mastocytosis gene. This also affects your glutathione production. And basically, if you have the CBS gene, and people with mast cell issues, we already know we can't make glutathione like a normal person. So that's where this comes in, because we need glutathione to get the oxalates out of our system. So if you don't have enough glutathione, you're going to have a lot more oxalate accumulation. Those who get kidney stones have a higher mast cell counts. Ketotifen. This is supposed to be a mast cell stabilizer, but believe it or not, a lot of us don't think it stops our mast cells, but it also reduces formation of calcium oxalate kidney stones, believe it or not. So if you make a lot of kidney stones and you have a mast cell disorder, and you're trying to figure out why you're still taking the ketotifen, this could greatly help you. But again, taking out the sodas and the other foods that are oxalate rich will do you far more good than taking another pill. When it comes to the inflammation part, macrophages, activation by oxalate crystals. So we already know oxalates are triggering our mast cells. Now they're also triggering your macrophages, which is another type of white blood cell of your immune system. And this type of white blood cell, your macrophage, can promote healing, or it can signal inflammation that increases oxidation and creates even more inflammation. And believe it or not, if you remember the methylation video, that crashes our BH4 cycle. That is where the MTHFR 1298 Charlie is. And because it crashes that whole section, that creates a whole problem between what you're trying to detox through your kidneys and through your urine, and it also impacts a whole host of neurological symptoms. So it's really important that we get rid of these oxalates, because we don't want them activating all of this oxidation in your body. It becomes this huge negative feedback loop. And on top of this, this is having a huge impact on your liver. So oxalates play a role in metabolic dysfunction, which affects methylation. And remember, methylation is happening in the liver. So if you have a damaged liver or a fatty liver or a fibrotic liver, your oxidation level is going to climb. And the more oxidation you have in the body, the more damage it's going to do to your organs, your systems, to you, and the worse you're going to feel. When it comes to cancer, and in this situation we tend to talk more about breast cancer because it has a bigger impact on breast cancer. But chronic exposure to oxalates to breast epithelial cells increases the risk of normal cells to turn into a tumor, and it causes more fibrotic breasts. Remember, caffeine raises your estrogen 80% and breast cancer risk of 700%. So if you already have the CBS gene, the lack of glutathione, you're having too many oxalates, and you're drinking caffeine, because let's face it, chances are our oxalates are coming from caffeine, which happens to be soda. You are raising your estrogen 80% and you are raising your breast cancer risk to 700%. And I have actually seen percentages that have gone higher. Oh yeah, I forgot. The COMT gene. Oh, if you have the COMT gene, adding all these oxalates, caffeine, etc. with the COMT gene is bad news. Those breast cancer risks skyrocket even more. So hear me out here. If you have the CBS gene, that's your mast cell disorder gene, you're already slacking in the glutathione, and you have, say, the MTHFR 1298, and you have the VDR gene, and you have the COMT gene, drinking caffeine, drinking oxalates, eating a lot of oxalates, believe it or not, is really going to first make your boobs grow, then it's going to damage them, And then they could wind up becoming diseased. And trust me when I tell you, they can start hurting, and you do not want that. And if you are to that point and your lymph nodes are hurting as well, and you have been on an oxalate heavy diet, and generally if you're eating the Midwest diet or the standard American diet, chances are you're eating way too much of it. And if your breasts are hurting and then become swollen, and your body is swollen and your lymph nodes are hurting, this is a gigantic sign for you to stop, because you are causing damage in the body. And if you're not careful, you could wind up pushing your body towards the cancer side of the house. And if you're feeling like a tingling or crawling type sensation through your lymph nodes, remember, oxalates damage epithelial cells, and they're inside of your lymphatic system as well. So that, again, you need to pay attention, because this is damaging your main detoxification systems. This is damaging where your body houses part of your immune system. This slide is just in here for information if you want to take a look at it and how this works with the genetics, the excretion, the kidneys, possible kidney dialysis, and how this all works. Please pause the video and take a look. Alright, so your microbiome, your hormones, and oxalate and salicylate issues. Hormones, believe it or not, can actually influence the body's sensitivity to oxalates and salicylates through various mechanisms. So if all those other things didn't affect oxalates and salicylates, guess what? Your hormones do too. But remember, hormones come from your gut, so it's all connected. Saying the microbiome plays an important part to immune health, detoxing, metabolism, and immune responses, we also need to look at how this problem fits into this. Just like we did in inflammation, mitochondria, and methylation sections of the Cycle of Illness series. We have also previously discussed how mitochondria function and methylation also play into this, the microbiome being the last piece of this puzzle. Now remember, everything is interconnected. Hormonal imbalances or changes can and will exacerbate sensitivities, making it important to maintain hormonal health for overall well-being. Now, these hormones can influence the sensitivity to oxalates and salicylates through their effects on gut permeability, microbiome composition, immune responses, and inflammation. So, estrogen. Estrogen has been shown to influence gut permeability and microbiome composition, which can also affect oxalate metabolism and absorption. So yeah, estrogen messes with our gut. What doesn't it mess with for us poor mast cell patients? Estrogen can modulate immune responses, potentially impacting inflammatory reactions to salicylates. And every mast cell patient knows all about how estrogen is constantly activating mast cells. Gah! Progesterone. Progesterone can also affect gut motility and microbiome balance, influencing the metabolism of oxalates. It may modulate immune responses similarly to estrogen, impacting sensitivity to salicylates as well. Cortisol. I cannot stress this enough. Cortisol, your stress hormones. It makes this worse. Cortisol, a stress hormone, cortisol influences gut permeability and inflammation, which can affect the absorption and metabolism of oxalates and salicylates. Chronic stress and elevated cortisol levels can alter gut microbiota, and not in a good way, potentially impacting sensitivity to these compounds. I can tell you with accuracy that it will. Insulin. The blood sugar connection. Insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome can influence gut microbiota composition and function, affecting oxalate metabolism. Remember, there are components inside of your microbiome that also helps you with insulin and sugar, and keeping that balanced. Changes on insulin levels can also impact inflammatory responses, potentially affecting salicylate sensitivity. So if you're insulin resistant, chances are you're also going to be oxalate and salicylate resistant, and you're also going to probably have a lot more histamine issues and reactions and chemical sensitivities at the moment. Thyroid, the T3 and T4. Thyroid hormones regulate metabolism and gut motility, influencing the absorption and excretion of oxalates. Thyroid dysfunction can impact immune responses and inflammation, affecting sensitivity to salicylates. Now, remember, your stress hormone, cortisol, if you're under too much stress, is also going to affect your thyroid. It's not in a good way either. So we need to bring down the stress responses in your body. Testosterone. Testosterone can influence gut microbiota composition and immune function as well, potentially affecting oxalate metabolism and salicylate sensitivity. Now remember, thyroid also does testosterone, and it's connected to cortisol, and it's connected to thyroid. Everything is interconnected. Changes in testosterone levels can impact gut barrier function and your inflammation levels. Vitamin D. And if you have the VDR gene mutation, you want to pay attention to this. While vitamin D is not necessarily a hormone in the traditional sense, vitamin D acts like a hormone in the body and plays a role in immune regulation. Vitamin D deficiency has been linked to increased intestinal permeability and dysbiosis, which can impact oxalate and salicylate sensitivity. So, as if vitamin D deficiency didn't cause a whole host of other problems, including your chemical sensitivities, including your mast cell sensitivities, including fighting cancer, including helping your mood, including helping methylation. It also helps regulate the immune system and your sensitivity to oxalates and salicylates. So if you're somewhere and have a dark winter, a cold winter, anywhere where you're not getting much sun, vitamin D. You'd be surprised how much vitamin D can do for you. And if you've been watching my series, I'm really beginning to think that vitamin D is kind of the holy grail, one of the easiest things we can get our hands on to help keep us healthy. So please, vitamin D, remember, you want to stay above 100 or close to 100. So if your levels are 20, 10, 7, way too low. Way too low. So, salicylates and oxalates don't cause illness. They reveal where the cycle is already broken in your body. They are signals, not villains. When the cycle of illness is active, mitochondria can't regulate, immune signaling won't shut off, complement keeps firing, mast cells stay unstable, and tolerance completely disappears. Salicylates and oxalate intolerance isn't just about the food. It's about the gut, mitochondrial system, and methylation that has lost its ability to clear the toxin load. Okay, we've for the most part covered everything that's in here, but please read through it. You would be surprised how much oxalates and oxalate toxicity affects your health. Alright, so where are some of these sources of excess oxalates? We already said that it can come from the foods you eat or the byproducts that are made from metabolizing other compounds in your body. One of them, like we said, is diet, high oxalate foods. And vegans and raw food diets are going to be really high in oxalates, depending on what types of fruits and vegetables you're eating. Gut microbiome changes can cause excess oxalates because of the loss of oxalate degrading bacteria, like we were talking about earlier. And people who are on antibiotics are at high risk of this happening. Another factor is the genetic mutations because it disrupts the metabolism. And people with hyperoxaluria are at high risk of this. Another factor is intestinal absorption problems. So, like a leaky gut, or Crohn's, or bariatric surgery, because there's increased uptake. Kidney function impairment, which means that you're not clearing out the oxalates poor excretion, and people with kidney disease are high risk of this. Vitamin C excess. If you have too much vitamin C in your body, oh, the orange juice, that's what did me in. It converts to oxalates. Dang it. And supplement overuse can wind up causing this as well, because you may not realize how much vitamin C you're getting through multiple different forms of supplement. If any of it's getting pulled from citric acid type fruits, you're going to have vitamin C in it. There's also collagen, gelatin, and amino acid breakdown. And keep in mind, part of your methylation cycles specifically encompasses amino acid breakdown. And this is going to wind up affecting you as you get older, and also if you use a lot of supplements. This is why I tell folks, when it comes to supplements, less is more. Fix the systems and then only take what your body cannot produce on its own. But fix the systems, because taking too many supplements, there's too many hidden things in the supplements that you could wind up hurting yourself with. Eat something as simple as vitamin C, orange juice, and giving myself a double whammy of oxalates, not realizing that it converted into oxalate. And it's a hapten, which creates super molecules. And if you create super molecules, your body can't break them down and clear them out very easily. So yeah, if you're drinking orange juice and you're taking a lot of vitamin C and then eating other foods with oxalate, you are so shooting yourself in the foot. And as you can tell, I am not an oxalate expert. But I know people who are. There is Pam Coleman with Healing Histamine. It's Yasmina Yugustin's site. She actually does consults if you want to know about oxalates, and she can help you with your diet. There's also Facebook groups like the TLO, the Low Oxalate Facebook group. And there are plenty of resources out there to help you with oxalates. Just remember, oxalate and salicylate sensitivities is a sign that there is a bigger problem going on. And in order to heal your salicylate and oxalate issues, you need to fix the cycle of illness, your microbiome, your methylation, and your mitochondria, as well as your diet, your lifestyle habits, the things that you use in your home, and your sleep hygiene habits, and your stress levels. All of this plays a huge role.